join us in a moment of silence and as well the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Beth, will you continue with roll call?
Boy,
Here.
Langy,
Here.
Merrill,
Here.
Clausen,
Here.
Murin, Moaning,
Here.
Faust,
Here.
File.
Here.
All right. First under action would be a request for approval of the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Second?
A motion with a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. If you will please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
All right, and as well, a request for approval of the full agenda.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Second that.
We have a motion with a second to approve the full agenda as presented. Again, if you would please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
All right. First thing to note here is under special presentations, city staff update on the SID number 1 of Stanton County Woodland Park sewer issue.
Yes, Your Honor. This is, we're doing as we're directed by the council to give you quarterly updates on the progress that SID number 1, Stanton County's making on their facilities master plan, as the council directed that they would visit with them, with those folks as soon as the master plan was completed and approved by DEQ. So we know this. We know in your packets you'll see that they've been corresponding and working through that facilities master plan, which is a positive direction that everyone's taken. So that's a wonderful blessing for the whole progress there. There's some, as pointed out by NEDQ, there's some improvements that they need to make to their planning document, which is fairly typical when when you take it on something as major as a sewer system. There's always kind of situations come up. Usually you don't get through the DEQ on first blush. So there's some, you'll see in your packet that in their report that there's some things that they need to work on, and by all indications that they're going to continue to work down that path to address those concerns with DEQ. So it appears that the relationship between NDEQ and SID number 1 is established and headed in the right direction. We are getting courtesy copied, or Dennis is getting courtesy copied on all that correspondence. So we're seeing that, and we appreciate that being shared by all the parties involved. We also got a quarterly report today from SID number 1 from Bryan Engineering, which we requested, which is another positive sign. I think it's our first formal quarterly report we got, second quarterly report we got, so that's great to see. And again, that was indicated that basically the relationship is continuing on with NDEQ and SID number 1, as it should be. We're working on the lift station, and Dennis and Iston, our consulting engineers, working on the lift station 275 and Victory Road, and that's progressing nicely. I'll turn that over to Dennis for a quick report on that status. Dennis, if you would.
We've got most of the information pulled together as to the existing lift station, its capacity, and some of that. We've identified land used areas in there and some flow characteristics that we would expect for them. The thing that can swing it one way, long ways one way or the other direction is what happens with our industrial customers out in the area that's served by that lift station. So we're trying to follow up with them and get some additional information and detail on what their loading might be, so that we can properly size the improvements going forward. Initial review would be is that we're hoping that we can make the short-term improvements, 5-10 year type improvements inside the existing facility, and then make plans for some other improvements if the growth continues in that area from our industrial folks. So we're making progress. Hope in the next 30 days or so to start pulling some of that stuff together and have a draft report by the end of February.
I think it's
Okay.
important to point out that those capacity issues are really what it's all about, you know, so we think it's a good sign when Woodland Park is engaged in understanding those capacity issues clearly on what the whole Woodland Park sewer needs are out there, because those capacity issues directly affect that lift station, would directly affect our ability to continue to grow the eastern side of North Fork. So all those things, as almost everything that I know of is, everything relates to everything else. We're gonna take this all as positive indications that we're gonna make great progress on that, so we can have solid lift station, solid capacity issues understood and controlled from that area, including Woodland Park, and then move on with continuing to grow our community on the eastern side of our border there, so.
Dennis, I have a question for you. And I don't know if you can answer it today or not, but if we were to need to put a new lift station out there for future growth and what have you, from start to finish, the application process and all that, about how long does that take? Application process, construction, all of that kind of thing?
If we were starting from scratch, I would say it'd probably be a couple years. Maybe we could shorten that up. You know, we're gonna have some design time in there. And then, depending on what we're trying to build, a year of construction, so maybe 18 months to 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis, just typically, how often do we reassess different areas? Is it just like kind of piecemeal when we have a situation in one area, or overall the whole enterprise system with the sewer and the water? We're constantly looking at that, I realize, but do we have that on a 10, 20, 30-year plan?
We try to do master planning updates on a 10-year cycle or so. And those tend to tell you where your next problem spot might be, and then you go in and do some more refinement, detail study on that, so.
Any other questions at all, council? Anyone else? Okay, thanks. Appreciate the update, and certainly much more discussion to go, so. Next, nothing? Okay. Under public hearing, we have a public hearing for the mayor and the city council to sit as a board of equalization to levy a special assessment against property located at 300 South Fifth Street for mowing, weed control, litter removal, property maintenance, and demolition of a structure exceeding $10,000. So if I could, I would ask for a motion to adjourn as the mayor and council and convene as the Board of Equalization.
So move, Your Honor.
Second.
A motion with a second. Please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
Okay, any discussion on this, council, as far as, looks pretty clear to me what we're doing. We're assessing $10,166.68. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone else that wants to speak to this or may have questions? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to close the hearing then and ask for a motion to adjourn as the Board of Equalization and reconvene as mayor and council.
I'll make the motion, Your Honor.
Second.
Okay, motion with a second. Again, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative.
All right, and next would be consideration of adoption of resolution number 2014-2, levying a special assessment in the amount of $10,166.68 against property at 300 South Fifth Street for mowing, removal of weeds, incidental litter and debris, and for property maintenance and demolition of a structure declared as unfit for human occupancy or use and posted as condemned.
Your Honor, I'd offer for consideration Resolution 2014-2.
Second that, Your Honor.
All right, we have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion at all?
Just question for legal counsel, where do we end up at on pecking order on this?
We're right behind real estate taxes.
Okay.
We're not in a good place.
Any other questions or comments? All right, if none, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, Resolution 2014-2 is adopted.
All right, and next, public hearing at the request of Benjamin and Sarah Conover regarding a zoning change from R1 Single Family to R3 Multiple Family in the 700 block of Queen City Boulevard. I will open this public hearing and look to you, Trent. Are you given, or? Great. We'll let you come forward and state your name for us, if you will, and sign in.
Sure. I'm Ben Conover. Kind of what we're looking to do is, I believe this is railroad property that we're looking to zone R3. We're going to split it into individual lots, ideally, and have 2 triplexes for multifamily housing. Any questions? I did bring a copy of the floor plans, what we're looking to do. Karen with JDO Engineering is
Sure.
out this week, so unfortunately she's not here, but she would have the exact outlines and everything kind of drawn up. I think we'd like to see those as well.
Any questions at all for Ben as he stands before us here, council?
I just have a question for Trent. Are these going right next to where those duplexes are right now that started? Or,
Mayor and council, this project will be down a little ways from where Dan Moore has his
Yeah.
duplexes. There's gonna be a gap right in there. This is gonna be closer to the museum, so where the museum is, it'd be that railroad property just north of there, so.
they should fit in there pretty nicely, I would think.
Yeah, everything else is R3 to the north there. All of Dan Moore's that's all R3, and then we do have some apartments there, and the rest of them duplexes along there are R3.
It'll be real tight, and there's kind of drainage back behind there, and I know Karen's drawn out kind of a drainage plan. You know, it's gonna be basically right at the lot line.
Yeah.
Should fit in there.
Everything fits on, good.
Any other comments or questions? Appreciate your being here tonight, Ben, and thanks for taking this on. Looks like a great project, I think. But with that, any other comments or before I ask for a planning commission report?
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing at the request of Ben and Sarah Conover for a zone change from R1 Single Family Residential to R3 Multiple Family Residential in the 700 block of Queen City Boulevard. This property was railroad right-of-way, and Mr. Conover is in the process of buying it from the city. He then plans to build triplexes on the parcel. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the zone change on an 8-0 vote.
Okay, with that, I will close this public hearing and look for consideration of ordinance number 5277, approving the zone change from R1 Single Family to R3 in the 700 block of Queen City.
Your Honor,
Your Honor, I'll introduce ordinance number 5277.
second that, Your Honor.
All right, we have a motion with a second. Any further discussion at all? If not, then short title.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
All right, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5277 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5277 on second and third.
Second.
A motion with a second that we suspend and pass on second and third. If no further discussion, again, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5277 carries on second and third.
All right. And next, we're looking at consideration of approval of a change order number 3 with Elkhorn Paving Construction Company for concrete improvements 2013-2 20th Street project, resulting in a net increase of $15,987.75.
Your Honor, I'd move consideration of change order number 3.
All right,
I'll second that.
Thanks. Motion with a second, and it looks like we have Mark here to give us reason for.
This change order is the final change order for our 20th Street Improvements project that occurred this summer. Just to note, the contract is based on a unit price, so at the end of the project, we balance quantities for the positive or the negative, and we break down the project into, concrete, sod, pipe by the linear foot, all certain quantities like that, and it's unit price, so if we're over or under, we balance them to match, so the contractor and the city are both treated fairly. The main items that you'll notice are the 4-inch sidewalks, the 6-inch driveways, and the sod were the major quantity, or the major items I'm sure most of you noticed as the bigger items. The sidewalk was built according to plan. There was just a minor glitch. We were adding the quantities up on the bid tab that once the segment was errantly omitted. And so it was built according to plan, so that would have been included in the original contract. We just didn't catch it until the contractor submitted his quantities. The driveway, some of the driveways, we went back a little further to better blend to the existing. On the drawing, usually draw to a point, but sometimes it's better to go a little further back to have a better product in the end. The third item, that was the biggest item on the change order, was the sod. The reason for that is partway through the design, we decided to narrow up part of the street and which reduced the concrete quantity but increased the sod quantity. This also changed our construction method, which allowed us to use a paving machine, which requires more disturbance of the area behind the back of the curb. So in conjunction with those two, that sod quantity wasn't updated to reflect those changes. And similar driveways, we also go back just a little bit further than, sometimes we do that just to blend back to existing. So those are the reasoning for the 3 major items on the change order. I'd like to answer any questions you may have.
Mark, I got a question. One of the first change orders was for about $8,600 for dirt.
Yeah, that change order, our original plan was to stockpile the dirt and then have the street crew haul it off. I believe the street division got a little busy and they weren't able to commit the man hours that they thought they were to that, so we had to have the contractor haul that one off. That was the first change order. The second change order was it was no change to the price. It was just reducing the retainage from 10% to 5% because the contractor was all but complete with the project. We just didn't want to finalize the project until we were certain on the quantities. So those are the first 2 change orders.
Okay. One other one, A&R Construction, you said it was a plan holder. Explain it to me one more time, a plan holder is?
Yeah, on this project, we had one bid, but a plan holder, there was 2 plan holders, and the plan holders are the folks that purchase a set of plans and specifications that we develop, and that way they can prepare their bid. So A&R was a plan holder, so we were under the impression that they were planning on bidding, and talking with Elkhorn Paving prior to the bid, they thought that A&R was gonna bid as well. So we felt like while we only had one bid, we still got a fair price, and they were bidding like they had competition, because as far as everyone knew who they did.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mark? Okay. Appreciate it, Mark. Thanks. And with that, any other questions or comments or concerns? If not, then let's vote on the change order number 3.
All council members voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
All right, and next is consideration of ordinance number 5278, authorizing the sale of abandoned Chicago and Northwestern Railroad right-of-way of property on the west side of Queen City Boulevard between Maple Avenue and Walnut to Benjamin and Sarah Conover for $40,000 pursuant to the terms of a real estate purchase agreement between the city and the Conovers.
Your Honor, I'll make the motion for ordinance 5278 on first reading.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion with a second. Any discussion on this or questions at all? Looks pretty right there in front of us, so with
Hey,
that, yep.
Just a
go ahead.
general question, how much more of this railroad property do we have remaining? That should be pretty close to the end of it.
Well, there's scab pieces here and there, but the buildable pieces are pretty limited, so yeah, about the end of it.
Any other questions for discussion? If not, Beth, you have a short title for us?
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to authorize the sale of city property, to provide the terms of sale and authorize the mayor to execute and deliver a quitclaim deed to the property, to provide for a remonstrance to said property, to said sale as provided by law, and to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and publication of the ordinance in pamphlet form.
All right, and with that, would you please vote?
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5278 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5278 on second and third.
Second.
We have a motion with a second to suspend and pass on second and third. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5278 carries on second and third.
And last but not least is a consideration of approval of ordinance 5279, amending section 24-164A of the city code to restrict parking on a portion of the west side of North Fifth Street, just north of the entrance to the Norfolk City offices at 309 North Fifth Street. I would ask for a motion.
I would introduce ordinance number 5279.
Second?
All right, we have a motion with a second, and I believe Captain Miller is going to come up and talk with us about this.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Don Miller. I'm the relatively new Operations Bureau Commander for the Norfolk Police Department. This parking issue came up when some complaints were received for visibility as people were leaving the city offices on the east side going on Fifth Street. They asked us to evaluate it, and as we looked at it, we determined that there was a significant vision obstruction due to the vehicles parked on the west side. As we tried to evaluate, a safe area, we took several measurements, and it was determined that we would need to eliminate about 3 parking spots to open up the visibility. As a reference point, the pictures that should be in your packets has 2 of the parking stalls already vacant at the time. The vehicle that's parked there is the 3rd one that we'd like to eliminate to create a restriction. As you look, both vehicles traveling north, the exit of the city offices is hard to see, and those leaving the parking lot, it's hard to see the vehicles coming southbound. Some of the concerns is with the high school and the amount of traffic, and we determined that there was a significant risk, safety concern, and feel that a parking restriction should be put in place for that area, roughly eliminating 3 parking spots. And if you have any questions beyond that, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions at all?
I just have a question, not criticizing what you're doing, because I think it would help, but for the 3 or 4 people that can't park there, that work here, do we have somewhere for them to be? Will that fill up our parking lot out here, or do we have an alternative place for them to be?
We certainly,
Yeah, that, most of that street is used by a combination of city employees and the folks that work across the way at the little businesses on the east side of the street. Our employees can park in our parking lot, or they can use the street, but as far as, do we have the room? Absolutely, we have the room in our parking lot that we can use, and if it becomes an issue between us, and it's kind of a first come, first served basis, as most parking is, so, it's kind of a split between city employees and the folks that are working across the street, so we work that out amongst ourselves usually, however that works out, but we do have the room to park inside the city hall proper here, parking lot proper.
Shane, on that note, our parking lot is public property. Those folks could park here just as well.
Well, yes, technically, absolutely, they could. We could restrict that if we wanted to, for our parking if we had to, but, for instance, we have that occur. Some folks that work across the way here to the west of us park in our parking lot, and they work at the probation office, so. We were blessed with a nice sized parking lot here around City Hall, and during business hours, typically is not full.
Any other questions for him, council, while we have him before us? I think you're good to go, and I have to agree. I pull out of there quite often, and, you know, I do believe that obstruction has been there, so I appreciate the efforts put into it to bring it forward. So if no further discussion, then a short title?
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend Section 24-164 of the official city code to restrict parking in the 300 block of North Fifth Street, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5279 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I move we suspend the rules and pass ordinance 5279 on second and third.
Second that?
We have a motion with a second to suspend the rules and pass on second and third. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members voting in the affirmative, ordinance 5279 carries on second and third.
Seeing nothing further on the agenda, we're adjourned.